Which optic to put on top of your Rimfire rifle? That is what we're going to cover in depth in this video. Hey guys, Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. I'm back with Seth Gardner from DM Targets. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Glad to be here.
You are somewhat of a Rimfire expert and aficionado.
Aficionado, expert, eh.
Well, you're putting on matches, you make targets, you compete. You're an expert, okay? Let's put it that simply. And one of the big questions people are going to have when they're getting into Rimfire is what optic to go with. You know, you can use the same optic on your Rimfire as you do on your centerfire, but really there's a different set of questions that you need to evaluate, ask yourself, and come up with good answers for before you go to spend the money on that optic. So in this video, we've got those considerations, and then we also have 3 examples starting at a more budget-oriented, a mid-range, and then a high-end scope option. All this is from Athlon. We've got these great Bergara rifles as well. Seth and I just filmed a video where we talk about what it takes to get into NRL 22. So you're going to also want to watch that for sure. So appreciate your expertise. We had a lot of fun filming the NRL 22 video.
A lot of fun.
We're definitely getting involved, right? And so hopefully this video is helpful for you all like it's helpful for me. You know, we're getting rigs ready. I've got at least one team member that's likely to join me possibly in the spring to actually go out to some of these matches. We might do some training with you.
Looking forward to it.
All that. Really, really good stuff. Okay, so, and we'll start by saying Athlon actually has a how to find the right scope guide that you're going to want to check out online. But specifically for Rimfire, and with Seth's expertise, we wanted to talk about some of these factors you're going to want to think about. Okay, so let's start with focal plane. This is one of the first things people evaluate. Do I want first focal or do I want second focal? First focal, constant holdover over the entire magnification range. The tick marks are meaningful at any magnification. Correct. Second focal, I can actually see the tick marks at every magnification, but they're only valid at one magnification setting, potentially max.
Yes, so first focal is really good in dynamic situations where you're changing magnification and you need your holds to work regardless of magnification. Second focal plane, you always end up with really crisp reticle size that doesn't get chunky, but those subtensions only work at a certain magnification. Where the second focal really shines is like F-class and shooting from a bench at like a given target where you not have to make those quick adjustments on the fly.
Exactly. Yeah. Or hunting, where you might need to mag all the way out to like 3 or 4 or 5 power, and you still need to be able to see the crosshairs. And that could be paper thin on a first focal scope.
Yes, as that first focal, as you zoom in and zoom out, that reticle gets really small or really big.
Yeah.
So it can be a limitation in some places, but in a lot of ways it's an advantage. And in our sport, the precision rifle, the first focal really wins the day.
Right. To use an example, we had a couple different stages that we set up and we shot where there's a near target and a far target. And you're not going to have time to dial each time.
Not necessarily,
right?
Yeah.
You might find a case where it's just like, okay, I know I'll dial for the near target and then I'll hold. We had like 1.2, for instance, to go out to 94 yards. And so you kind of need to pick the magnification where you can still see that holdover, but you still have enough field of view to be able to switch between targets and all that. And holdover is important. I think that's what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah.
And wind is a huge thing with rimfire. Those bullets get pushed hard, right?
Oh yes, it's even we're out here a little earlier and it was seemingly dead calm. There was still a little bit of push going on.
Yeah.
So
if you're plinking, either one. If you're doing something like NRL 22, definitely go first focal.
Yeah, I would really push you towards that. I'm not going to say you can't do it with the other, but you're making life a little more difficult for yourself.
Okay, second factor is parallax, which is important for all shooting scenarios, but can take on special significance for rimfire because some of these targets are incredibly close.
Yes.
Right, like we have one optic here that's 25 yards, close focusing. In other words, the limit of where your parallax is actually valid, right? And we have one that's 15, I think. And there's a big difference there between 15 and 25 in an NRL competition.
Yes. If you do have a target that's closer than your parallax, you may not be able to get a good clean sight picture on it because you simply just can't
And
parallax.
point of aim might not
close.
be accurate, even if you can see through the fuzzy, out of focus
Correct.
sight picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
So is having that to where you can come in close enough is really important for the rimfire stuff.
So focus is one part of it, but then there's the other part. Like when I'm shooting from the bench at 100 yards, I get my parallax perfect. And by that, I mean, first I will go to the appropriate setting for the yardage I'm shooting, say 100, and then I'll move my head slightly and I'll look for reticle movement between where the point of aim currently is on the target, and if it shifts at all, I'm going to adjust it above or below the value until I can move my head a little bit and see that center of the crosshairs not move at all. And what that ensures is that your point of aim doesn't shift as your head shifts, right?
Yes.
Because if it shifts one MOA, worst case scenario, you're off target, right?
Oh yeah. And that's critical, and it's more drastic the closer you into the target.
True.
So if you're, say shooting at a target at 500 yards, the parallax isn't really as much of an issue. But inside at the ranges we shoot the 22s, it certainly is.
So talk a little bit about depth of field, right? The total window of distance where focus is valid and where the point of aim will be consistent with head movement.
Yeah, so as if you would have a optic that has a more forgiving depth of field, is it will make it so it's not as fussy, if you will. You can be a little off and still be good to go.
In other words, you got the near target and the far target, or 3 or 4 targets, and you don't have to worry about parallax between because it's good enough.
Yes,
is that fair to say?
It's good enough.
Yeah.
It may not be quite as precise, but it's good enough.
And we'll hit on this more when we talk about these 3 different optics, because they actually have different windows of parallax, validity, sensitivity, that kind of thing. Okay, tube diameter. Talk about tube diameter here.
So tube diameter really comes down to giving the erector more range of movement, which leads to being able to dial more elevation or wind. And a larger tube is just obviously going to give you more elevation than you can dial.
These are all 34 millimeter tubes, but 1 inch is also popular and 30 millimeters also popular.
Yes. The 30 mil and then the 1 inch will limit you on how far of a target you're going to be able to engage without a whole lot of angle built into your base.
Now, the good news about NRL 22 specifically is that you're going to be able to get access to the course of fire ahead of time.
Yes.
So there's not going to be that random wild card. Oh, by the way, we're going to 200. Oh, well, I only got doped to 100, or my scope is only good to 100, right?
Yeah, so the NRL is built around a 100-yard range. Now, they do have an option B where they will shoot further, but if you shoot at that range, you should probably know that and have a good idea of what they're doing.
Yep. Okay, so we're just talking about the reticle and the sight picture and parallax and all that. Let's talk about the actual reticle style here real quick. Hash marks, dots, crosses, Christmas trees, right? So all these scopes have a Christmas tree style reticle where you have horizontal and vertical stadia, and then you have reference points coming down, which is really handy when you have to do a holdover and hold wind at the same time. Right.
Because now you're having to come up over and away from your thing. I do like these reticles a lot. I like a 2/10 hash, which these have, and they have reference points on the Christmas tree of 2, 4, 6, whatnot, so you know which line you're holding.
Yeah.
When you start holding a lot of elevation, you can get lost in the dots really easy.
Absolutely.
So I think 2 of these have that, and I think one of them, I think it's this one here, actually has a reference points on every line.
Nice. Okay, so a Christmas tree. Is that what you're going to probably land on then for something at NRL 22?
Generally, I'd recommend that, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. How about mil versus MOA? The classic, it's a little bit like inch versus metric, right?
Yes. I mean,
they both work, right? Technically.
They're just 2 ways to measure an angle, right? The common language spoken is mil. So it will be easier to get on board if you're running a mil system. The mental math is easier. Instead of thinking in fractions, you're thinking in decimals. So that just
case in point,
makes life
you're
easy.
at the match and you hear someone say 1.2.
Yeah.
And you file that away.
Yes.
If you're also shooting mils, that's good info for you. If you're shooting
absolutely.
MOAs, that could be like, oh, I have to do some mental math. Is that going to work for my scope? Yeah, that kind of.
Well, and the as often the person you're shooting with will be running mill. So after, say you come off a stage, you're like, man, I couldn't get a handle on that target. Where was I hitting? And if they're speaking a different language than you, that's not going to help you very much.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to have to do the conversion in your head. You know, they, instead of saying, you know, well, you're hitting about 3/10 to the right, or, you know, 0.3 mils off target to the right, versus your 1 MOA, you know.
Right.
It's and then it's not quite an exact conversion.
If
So.
you already have an MOA scope, run it.
Yes.
Just get into the sport, get your feet wet, and then you're going to truly, you might also realize, in addition to going to mills, that you want X and Y and Z features or a certain brand or whatever, right?
Yeah, and if you are really familiar with the MOA and it's your happy place, run it by all means.
Yeah.
Right? Just realize that people will be speaking a different language than you for the most part.
Absolutely. So turrets, dials, angular quantity per rotation, and total range, right? Total range is critical. And think of that in combination with the inclination of your scope rail, right? 20 MOA is now standard for center fire long range applications. I would say 30 MOA seems pretty popular for rimfire, but you might want, in some cases, if you're shooting ELR, for instance, go even further than that.
Oh, absolutely. So if you go, you know, a 50 or 60 MOA rail, it's going to give you the opportunity to be able to dial out further ranges. With the downside is you may not be able to zero at 50 yards.
Exactly.
Right? You know, so you know, that scope's already pointed down so much.
And also keep in mind you're going to be able to hold, right? So it's the inclination of your rail, plus the range in your turret, plus what you can hold on the reticle itself. And that, beyond that, you're having to pick trees above the target or whatever it is to hold on.
Yeah, and I mean, occasionally on side stages or additional stages, like an NRL 22 or a PRS match, you might see targets out to 300 yards. I've seen them out to 400, but you know, they seem to be coming in a little bit. So if you don't have enough optic to get out there, you are holding in outer space, and it can be challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so all these scopes are 10 mils per rev,
revolution,
which is really handy when you have to go above that 10, because then you're adding 10 to everything instead of some strange odd number, or in a worst case scenario, a half mil thing. So then it gets really weird. So this 10 mil revs is great.
Yep. And zero stop. Right? Zero stop is another important thing, because you're going to want to dial out your dope between each stage, so that you know it's a new stage, I'm dialing up X amount, I don't have to worry about it's already dialed, or I'm adding to that, it's already one exact revolution, whatever the deal is, right?
Yeah, having a good zero stop is critical.
Yeah.
Just because that way you can come back and just run it up against that stop and know you're where you need to be, and you're not having to look at a dial, even though they do have little hash marks that tell you on what rev you are. I can tell you from experience, it's really easy to not notice those and come into a stage being a rev off, and that's just a recipe for missing a lot of targets.
Yeah, and you want to be able to do it without even looking, right?
Yes.
Just all the way down, and then let's go from there. Yep, absolutely. Okay, how about the weight of the scope? Do you even care for rimfire if you're in a target application? Your rifle, your comp rifle is heavy.
It is. So weight actually is a benefit in in like the PRS, NRL, those kind of shooting scenarios. It just means the gun holds it. It's less likely to move. So it's not a big concern. If you were hunting, weight really matters. But as far as competition, more weight generally is better, as long as the weight's in the right place.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, and then how about glass quality? Let's talk about the trade-offs there.
So
budget versus clarity, you know, optical quality, chromatic aberration, all of those effects, light gathering.
Yes. So a lower tier glass is you're going to struggle a little more in low light conditions, right? Is during bright sunny days, it's going to do well. You will have maybe some color distortions, this and that. That doesn't make a difference on how you shoot, right? Is, you know, if the target has a little bit of fringe, that's not the end of the world.
You can deal with it.
You can deal with it, right? And if you need to really fine resolution at like further ranges, you might struggle a little bit. But for your intermediate stuff during well lit conditions, it's going to be sufficient.
Yeah.
But if you do need those other things, that's when you step up to the higher tier, right? It's not going to be needed for your day-to-day just go out and have fun match.
Right.
But it's never a bad thing, right? So it's yeah.
Okay, so that's pretty much a summary of all of the key factors. Why don't we walk through the 3 different scopes, and we can kind of compare a low, medium, high cost range kind of comparison. So this is the rifle I was shooting during our kind of mock NRL 22 stages. Helos BTR Gen 2, 6-24 by 56, APRS 6 FFP, illuminated reticle, and its mil. So this happens to be the exact same scope that we did some of the Rockchuck Olympics work with, right? So it's something that you've seen here on the channel. I actually really liked this optic.
It's a fantastic optic,
Yeah.
and it does what an optic needs to do. It allows you to dial to the targets, hit the targets, acquire the targets, hold over for the targets. It's an absolutely adequate, good optic.
So now, aligned with the factors that we just talked about, let's see how this kind of stacks up. So it's first focal plane, which we've got across the board here. Side focus, this one goes down to 10 yards.
Yes, this is actually the best of the 3 as far as parallax being able to come in.
Yep. And so it has also a low parallax sensitivity. In other words, it's going to give you a little bit more forgiveness with distance without having to adjust parallax. 34 millimeter tube, that APRS 6 FFP IR mil that we talked about. Illuminated, great for certain things, not going to be a factor at an NRL 22 match, hopefully. Right?
And it does have the locking turrets, which can actually be handy, because then if you need to have a lot of movement, you don't have to worry about bumping your turret and throwing that off.
Yep, absolutely. I forgot to look. Yeah, both of them lock on that particular model. 34.5 ounces. MSRP is $749.95, but I think if you look around, you might find it as low as like $550, $560.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I think this one, if you're just getting into the sport, definitely think about this exact scope because it's a winner.
Yeah, so it's not a cheap scope.
No.
But it's an affordable scope.
But you shouldn't use a cheap scope if you're going to compete.
Exactly.
This is definitely an affordable scope. I think it's a winner.
Yeah.
In the middle tier, so we just did some shooting today with this one. We've got the Athlon Ares ETR UHD 4.5 to 30 by 56 APRS 6, so same reticle. FFP, illuminated reticle mil specific model. These are all available in MOA as well.
Yes.
But we prefer mils, and so that's what we've got here. So again, first focal plane, one of the bigger differences between the two scopes, 25 yards close focusing versus 10. That's a big difference.
It is. Yeah, I mean, but 25, you can work with that, right?
How frequently is an NRL 22 match going to be inside of that, would you say?
It's fairly rare. I have seen, and it's not necessarily an NRL, it's in other similar disciplines. So some of the targets coming in a little closer. But you can make do with that. You're close to, you may be close to your nearest target, but most of the time you'll be fine.
So you don't want to go beyond 25, I'm guessing, if it was 35 or beyond.
Yeah, 25 would be like the minimum of what I recommend.
Gotcha. Again, the parallax sensitivity on this one is going to be kind of more in the medium range. Again, 34 millimeter tube. We've got a few different options for the reticle. So the turrets, again, like all of them here, are exposed. This one happens to have locking windage. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. But the elevation is fixed. 36.5 ounces. Pretty similar weight, actually, across the board, in the mid-30s here for ounces. MSRP on this is $1437.49. I think the big difference here is that this is UHD glass, so the grade is a little higher.
Yeah, much better glass.
Right.
That's really when it comes to scopes, is the glass is what you pay for. So.
Yep. Now, and then when we step up to the Cronus, we've done a ton of shooting with the Cronus, right? Really great Japanese-made scope in terms of the glass and whatnot. This guy's going to, again, be first focal plane. Side focus is 25 yards, just like our Ares. High parallax sensitivity. So you have to just keep that in mind here. You're going to need to be on your parallax a little bit more.
Yes, but that can be a benefit if you're really trying to dial in and eliminate any of that error, you can do it better with one that is going to have the higher sensitivity.
Gotcha.
But the downside is when you're trying to transition between a bunch of different targets, it is going to be more fussy, and you may have to run that dial.
Again, 34 millimeter tube, multiple reticle types. You've got your MOA option and your mill option. We've got the mill option again. Exposed turrets, non-locking, 35.8 ounces. MSRP on this one is a little higher, $1874.99. I think where this scope really shines is in the quality department.
Yes. What you're getting is tighter tolerances, everything to a higher tier.
Yep. But like what you shared with me when we were shooting, you've seen a lot of these more budget-oriented scopes hold up pretty well in terms of the mechanicals, right?
Oh, absolutely. I've got a tier scope. Actually, it's lower. It's an Athlon lower tier than this Helos on my wife's rig that she runs in competition, and we've been running it for a couple of years with no problems. It does what it's supposed to do every time. I can't be happier with it, especially for the price point. Yeah,
and that's where I like the idea of Rimfire, because it gives you a little bit more forgiveness. If you're bucking a 300 Win Mag, you know, the lower quality internals might come into play there, and you might want to definitely consider a higher baseline, I would say.
Yes. I mean, I don't know the ins and the outs of how scopes are made, but one can safely assume that a higher tier scope is built to a little higher standard with a little heavier materials.
Better materials.
Better materials than the budget offering, right?
So. Absolutely. So at the end of the day, it's about finding what's going to work for you, right? What's your budget and what are you using the scope for? Consider where you're at in your career as a professional shooter. If I'm a complete novice coming in to try this, you might want to try it with the scope that you already have, right? To see, is this where it's at for me? Am I enjoying this kind of a competition?
Yeah, coming in, running what you've got is a great way to just get your feet wet and then get a feel for what is going to work best for you and what your needs actually are, right? I mean, it's one thing to research it, but it's another thing to do it.
Yeah. And there's a lot more equipment involved beyond just the scopes. We have these Athlon binos that have the mill reticle built into them. We just got these. These are cool.
I was really impressed with those. Is when you're zeroing the gun, is because it had that mill reticle in it that is the exact same as your thing. I could literally tell you how many clicks you have to move to bring that sucker right to zero. And we got that thing zero, 3 shots?
I know.
From a brand new scope on a brand new rifle?
Totally amazing. We also have the Athlon spotter that has the fixed power mill reticle eyepiece.
Yes.
That works great. But, you know, I'm going to probably use this more for center fire because of the magnification. You know, these are 12 power on these. I'm thinking this is just about perfect for your rimfire stuff because at 100 yards, you can still see all the targets in great detail, all that.
Yes, and looking through binoculars, you get a little more depth, which makes it easier to see exactly what's going on, and what's going on in front and behind,
right?
Binocular vision. So it's really good for that. And you are more likely to pick up the things that you may miss in a spotter. And they're easy to pack, and you can use them anywhere.
Yeah, gotta love that. Yeah. Just make sure you have a way to clamp them to your tripod, because you're not going to want to just sit there and handhold your binos.
I mean, a shooting bag on top of a tripod works pretty well too.
So some way to support them.
Yes, some way to support them. Freehanding, it's going to be rough.
It's going to, especially when you're running a timer and then spotting.
Yes.
Those sorts of things. Okay, so don't forget, Seth makes awesome steel targets for both center fire and for rimfire. In fact, you even make kits for match directors, or if you just want to practice at home.
Yes.
And so, d-mtargets.com.
Yep, D-M Targets.
Rimfire tab, or if you want to check out the center fire targets, check out the Rock Check Olympics. We had a ton of fun, and Seth made all of the targets for that event. Good stuff, man.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Okay, and one question for you all. The one question from this video is, what scope are you running on your rimfire rig? Tell us about that in the comments section. We'll just start a discussion down there. Thank you again, Seth, for joining me. This has been a lot of fun.
A great time being here as always, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. Thanks again for watching.